Hi, I hope you're having a great day. Hisashiburi desu yo ne. First off, I just want to extend my genuine gratitude for this. Honestly, I really didn't expect this channel to reach 1,000 subscribers after announcing my short hiatus for reasons. Daghang salamat, maraming salamat, thank you very much, arigatou gozaimashita. So yeah, as per the result of the poll I posted weeks prior, in today's video, we'll be discussing this. Is caregiving in Japan worth it? Needless to say, this video is for those people who are thinking about trying their luck here in Japan by working as a foreign care worker. Just a heads up, even though we will be discussing some facts, hard truths about working as a care worker here in Japan, as well as some of my experience concerning those facts, at the end of the day or at the end of this video, you, the viewers, will be the one who will decide if caregiving in Japan is really worth it. So this video will be a long one, a really long one. So without further ado, let's begin. Is the salary worth it? Arguably, salary is the deciding factor that causes most, if not all of us, to leave our family back home and work overseas. So how much does a care worker, foreign or otherwise, really earn in Japan? To answer that, I visited the website of Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, or in Japanese, Kosei Rodo Sho. They've released the results of a survey on the treatment of health workers, which, lucky for us, includes a table of the average basic salary of caregivers in 2021. This table shows us that there was actually an increase of 2,400 Japanese yen in the year 2021. So, as you can see here, the average basic monthly salary of caregivers in 2021 was around 187,180 Japanese yen. In 2020, it was 184,780 Japanese yen. So yeah, there was an increase back in 2021, but we have to take note that this amount was the basic monthly salary, which means it doesn't include overtime and night shift pay. On top of that, this amount was also the average monthly salary. That means foreign care workers here in Japan are actually earning more or less than this, depending on various factors, which includes but are not limited to your gender, your age, the location of your company, your experience, and of course, the type of facility you will be working at. This is another table which shows the difference in salary based on the type of facility you'll work at. A not so fun fact, caregiving as a job here in Japan is not one of those high-paying jobs that you can find in this country. This is a list of the high-paying jobs in Japan in 2022, and as you can see, you cannot see any kaigosha or even a kaigo fukushishi listed here. That's one of the reasons actually that most natives here doesn't want to be a caregiver and take care of their own elderly, resulting in a shortage of manpower which causes Japan to hire more foreign caregivers. Despite the fact that this is the basic average monthly salary of a caregiver, and despite the fact that upon working here as a caregiver, you will probably end up earning less than this. The question is, can you earn this in your home country if you work as a caregiver or even a nurse? I'm not saying this is enough. No. With continuous and outright ridiculous increase in prices of commodities and other financial responsibilities, even if you earn a little bit more than this, the struggle will still be real. That's for sure, dude. Nevertheless, whatever salary you may receive upon working as a care worker here in Japan, it still boils down on how you handle the money. You might be incredibly lucky and receive 500,000 Japanese yen as a monthly salary, but it might just go to waste without proper discipline and handling. Furthermore, even if you receive more or less than this, don't ever forget to be grateful. That's because not all of us can actually come and work here in Japan. A 187,180 Japanese yen might be the basic, the average, but it will, definitely will, open more doors of opportunities for you. Is the exchange rate worth it? Economics and the whole global market thingy is not really my forte, so please bear with me on this one. Aside from the salary and safety, the exchange rate, or in Japanese, kawase reto, is one of the most important things to consider before working overseas, especially to those people who are planning to send money back to their home country in a regular basis. But why does it matter? Dude, the exchange rate matters because remitters, you, the overseas worker, the one who will send money back to their home country, must take into account the value of the sending country's currency in relation to the value of the receiving country's currency. A good exchange rate, at least for us overseas workers, is when the value of the sending country's currency is lower than the value of the receiving country's currency. A bad exchange rate is the exact opposite of that. Allow me to give you an example. The US dollar Philippine peso exchange rate is $1 is equivalent to 55 pesos. That is, if you send $100 to the Philippines with this exchange rate, your family back home will receive around 5,500 Philippine pesos. Send $1,000 and that will be around 55,500 pesos. $10,000 and that will be around 555,000 pesos. But I don't want to be biased. The USA has the strongest currency in the world as far as I know, that is. How about we remain in Asia? How about Thailand's baht, where one Thai baht is equivalent to 1.65 Philippine pesos. If you send 100 Thai baht to the Philippines, that will be around 164 pesos and 61 centavos. A 1,000 Thai baht will be around 1,646 Philippine pesos. 10,000 Thai baht will be around 16,000 pesos. But since we're talking about working as a caregiver here in Japan, let's go ahead and see the exchange rates between the Japanese yen and the Philippine pesos. 1 Japanese yen is equivalent to 0.42 Philippine pesos.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Not even half of a single peso coin. So 100 Japanese yen is only around 42 pesos. A 1,000 Japanese yen is only around 420 Philippine pesos. Send 10,000 Japanese yen and that will be exactly 4,203.51 Philippine pesos. Can you see now how exchange rates affect the amount of money you send back home? If your home country's value is higher than the foreign country's, the amount that your family will receive will also be relatively higher. If it's the other way around, well, it's not good. Not good at all. The value of the Philippine peso in relation to the Japanese yen is lesser than the value of a single 1 peso coin. 1 Japanese yen is only 42 centavos. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in this time and age, you can't buy anything with just 42 cents. Allow that to sink in. But why? It's not always like this though. Once upon a time, specifically in the 1980s, Japan was the envy of the world. At that time, this country became so rich that it nearly overtook the USA as the economic superpower in the world. In the 1980s, Japan existed in a bubble of wealth and innovations. The mentality of the majority of the masses, at least in the 1980s, is that Japan equals money and the chance of becoming rich. However, since this era of Japanese wealth and innovations existed within a fragile economic bubble, the possibility of it bursting is ever present, and burst it did. These economic bubble bursts saw Japan fall from being the USA's rival to a nation second only to China, which remains true until this day. Despite Japan's fall from grace and becoming economically stagnant for decades since the 1990s, it is of utmost importance to remember that Japan is still the third strongest economy in the world. It is still a developed country, dude. Regardless, for the past decades, it is rare, very rare, to have an exchange rate like this. As you can see here in this graph, there are only select points in time that the Philippine peso reached or even exceeded the 0.50 line. Since coming and living here in Japan, the highest I had was just around 0.47 Philippine pesos. So yeah, there's that. It is undeniable that for the past few years, the exchange rates between Japanese yen and Philippine pesos is just utterly disappointing. Some of us might think that this doesn't bring justice to the hardships and sacrifices we as foreign care workers had to endure every day in this country. Some of you might think otherwise, and that's absolutely fine. Some of you might even say that there are still a lot of factors to consider when talking about the worthiness of the Japanese yen-Philippine peso exchange rate, like the cost of living in this country and working conditions and the like. But let's just focus on the exchange rate per se, shall we? Allow me to put this in perspective. Let's just say I've been remitting 10,000 Japanese yen a month, usa ka lapad, and with this exchange rate, that would be 4,200 Philippine pesos. That's the amount my family will receive back home every month for every 10,000 Japanese yen I send. However, the Japanese yen Philippine peso exchange rate has been declining lately, and that's a fact. That is, next month's rate would be, which means even if I send the same amount of 10,000 Japanese yen, the amount my family will receive will be lesser, just 4,000 Philippine pesos. Next month might be a lot lower. The month after that might be. The bottom line is, I've been sending the same amount of money to my family back home, but the value of that money, my money, has been decreasing. I know I should be grateful regardless of my salary because not everyone can come and work here in this country and whatnot, but it just hurts, you know, it just hurts. It just hurts to know that my 10,000 Japanese yen, which I earned after hours of hard, honest work, just cost around 3,500 Philippine pesos, and sometimes even less than that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 3,500 Philippine pesos in this day and age is not enough for a month. So for my family or your family to receive a little bit more, we have to increase the amount of money we send to them monthly. Basically, to compensate for the poor exchange rate, we might need to add a few more thousands in Japanese yen just to be able to send a sufficient amount of money. Now, you might think, that's fine, I have plenty to spare. Tangina kwartahan. But dude, while the exchange rate is almost hitting the floor, remember that your salary is increasing in a rate that is slower than a snail, if it even increases at all. Meanwhile, the prices of commodities and other goods in this country are rapidly increasing. Nevertheless, always remember that if you don't use your money wisely, even with a high exchange rate, it wouldn't even really matter at all. Find ways to earn more. Legally. Save and invest. Some of you might not see it, but with the right skills and knowledge, the land of the rising sun can be the land of opportunities as well. With diligence, discipline, and smart work, you might just make the best out of this. Or this. Is the harassment and prejudice worth it? Despite how the mainstream media and the internet portray Japan, this country is not all rainbows and unicorns. Like every country, there is a dark side for almost everything. And for us overseas workers, that might include workplace harassment and prejudice, bordering racism, all inside the toxic work environment. When one thinks about workplace harassment, most of us might immediately think about sexual harassment, which affects both sexes. However, here in Japan, there is another form of harassment that not only causes physical harm, but psychological suffering as well. In Japanese, it's called pawa harasumento or pawahara. In English, it's just power harassment. A form of harassment or workplace bullying in which someone in a position of greater power uses, or more appropriately, abuses that power to harass or bully a lower-ranking person, like us, like me. This form of harassment or bullying might range from acts of violence such as punching and kicking to being relentlessly yelled at, insulted, or spoken ill of in front of other employees. So far, I've never been punched or kicked here, but I've been called a lot of things like stupid or beggar among others. Have you been yelled at work? If you've been yelled at, same goes for me. But it's way different here in this country, where the insults and verbal abuse they will throw at you is thrown in a very humiliating manner in front of all the staff and residents and in a voice that can be heard even across the Sea of Japan. And they do it every day at work. It's like screaming insults is their daily bread. Regardless, the fact still remains that when you work here in this country, there's a possibility that you will experience power harassment. Power harassment is actually one of the many reasons why Japanese individuals often become hikikomori or commit karoshi. Hikikomori is a real phenomenon here in Japan where Japanese men and women totally isolate themselves from society in general, becoming socially reclusive modern-day hermits. Karoshi literally means death from overwork. It's a Japanese term relating to occupation-related deaths among Japanese individuals. And I'm not talking about work-related accidents. No. While the hikikomori might isolate themselves from society due to psychological stress and trauma, those who commit karoshi often do so through suicide. they literally kill themselves due to psychological stress often brought to them or done to them by those people at their workplace who are in a position of power. Now, just think about this. If a Japanese person can be harassed and bullied by a fellow Japanese to a point of suicide, how much more those who are non-Japanese? You might not end up being battered physically like this Vietnamese trainee, but believe me or not, Japanese people can harm you more without even laying a finger on you. Although a homogeneous society, not all Japanese are the same. There are actually, somewhere over there, are genuinely nice Japanese. But make no mistake, there are Japanese who are prejudiced toward foreigners, especially non-white foreigners. They are biased to a point that they are actually being racist. But what makes it worse than it already is the fact that these prejudiced and sometimes racist Japanese co-workers are often in a position of power. At first though, they can be difficult to identify because of these Japanese social phenomenon called tatemae. However, you are not alone. Regardless if you are a TITP trainee, an EPA applicant, or just a student visa holder, you are protected by the laws of both Japan and the Philippines, or whatever your home country is. Some embassies are there not only to do outreach programs, but they are there to guide and protect those who are under their jurisdiction. The government of this country also has laws against workplace harassment, any forms of workplace harassment for both natives and foreigners alike. Although these laws are sometimes questionable in terms of their effectiveness, just to be honest, your overall well-being is much more important than money. Yes, we came here for money. However, that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice our physical health and mental well-being. Remember that we have families back home waiting for us to return. Is the loneliness, homesickness, and depression worth it? Perhaps the greatest sacrifice any overseas worker can do is the fact that they had to leave their families back home to work in a foreign land. I've already made a video about this. I've left a link in the description box down below. You can go ahead and check that link later after watching this one, okay? So, loneliness, homesickness, and depression are arguably the worst enemies of an overseas worker wherever you are on this planet. Needless to say, these emotions may become unbearable to the point that some of us might just outright leave this country and just go back home. Despite how the media and the internet portray Japan, once you work and live here for an extended amount of time, you will understand and you will know how lonely and sad this country really is. For me at least, Japan is a great tourist destination, but a place to work and live, that might be debatable. Does becoming a certified caregiver worth it? Some of you might have seen my videos about becoming a certified caregiver here in Japan, its requirements, the exam, and its benefits. Out of the many benefits one can receive by becoming a Kaigo Fukushishi, arguably the two most important things are being able to receive a nursing care work visa and Shikaku Teate. This is perhaps the greatest benefit of becoming a certified caregiver here in this country. Although it is important to note that your certification as a certified caregiver is only viable or usable within the borders of the Japanese archipelago. In other countries, being a Kaigo Fukushishi doesn't mean shit. The Shikaku Teate is an allowance on top of the basic monthly salary given to those who pass the Kaigo Fukushishi Kokkashiken. The Japanese government has guidelines which mandates the minimum and the maximum amount a company can give to its employees as a Shikaku Teate. However, it is important to note that it is the prerogative of the company. It is based on the policy of the company whether they will give the minimum or the maximum amount or the amount in between those ranges to their employees as a Shikaku Teate. But remember, a caregiving company is not required to give a Shikaku Teate. That means there are foreign care workers here in Japan that despite having passed the National Caregiver Certification exam doesn't have a Shikaku Teate. The bottom line is that after passing the National Caregiver Certification exam, it will grant you the Nursing Care Work Visa, but it will not automatically give you a Shikaku Teate. Caregiving company cannot do anything about your visa becoming a work visa, but they definitely can control how much money they will give you as a Shikaku Teate, if they even give it to you at all. So, is it worth it? Well, for me, Yes, it's somewhat worth it. But wait, allow me to give you a little bit of context. I became a registered nurse in the Philippines at a time when paying a hospital to allow you to do unpaid voluntary work was the norm. As a result, some, if not most, of my fellow nurses ended up doing non-nursing related jobs. I am not the type of person where I pay a company to allow me to work voluntarily for them. I mean, what the fuck? Eventually though, I was persuaded to find a paid job, even how meager that pay is, with an end goal of becoming qualified enough to work overseas as a nurse. Thus, I endured earning 8,000 pesos monthly. The good thing at that time was that I was not married yet. But I saw firsthand the sad and harsh reality of being a nurse in the Philippines. You're basically the lowest of the low, both figuratively and literally. And as a man who wants to give back to his parents, support his siblings a little, and provide a better future for his own family, I know I had to make the hardest decision. For the sake of family, I had to leave that same family behind and work overseas. The bottom line is that, despite being alone and away from the family, I am able, somewhat, to support my family in a way that I cannot do if I'm still a nurse in the Philippines. I'm not saying that becoming a certified caregiver here in Japan is already enough. As such, be open to opportunities and to the fact that Japan might just be your stepping stone. Ultimately, the worthiness of a salary of a caregiver here in Japan depends on your circumstance. Nevertheless, whatever salary you receive, always remember to be thankful that you're even receiving a salary. For the exchange rates, well, for me at least, it will never be worth it. Workplace harassment and bullying will always be there, wherever you are on this planet. As a matter of fact, some countries might be a lot more racist than Japan. Learn the language. Knowing how to use the language properly, their language properly, might just be your best tool in defending yourself. I'm not saying to be bold and fight them. No. After all, at the end of the day, we're just visitors in their land. Loneliness, homesickness, and depression will always be there once you work overseas, regardless of your country. Remember, you can't use your license as a Kaigo Fukushishi outside of Japan. Once you decide to take the path of becoming a care worker here in Japan, do your best in everything that you do and aim to become a Kaigo Fukushishi. But don't stop there. There are still other opportunities out there that Japan cannot offer us. Know these opportunities and grab them while it's hot. So that's it. Those are some of my thoughts about the worthiness of being a care worker here in Japan. Thank you very much for watching this video, and special thank you for those who has been subscribing to this channel. I know that this video has been a long time coming, but the amount of people that have subscribed to this channel and the amount of support that you guys have shown is just absolutely insane. I'm just a guy who talks some shit that I think could be of interest to you, and this shows me that you guys value these kinds of videos. It's humbling. A huge thank you to everyone who is subscribed to this channel. You guys are the best. This is fucking amazing. I know that my consistency when it comes to uploading videos in this channel hasn't been the best, but hopefully for the coming weeks, I would be able to regularly upload videos for you. So yeah, once again, thank you so much. Before you go, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and of course, share this video with an interested friend. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your time watching this video. See you in the next one. Babush!